Right now, somewhere behind you, there might be nothing at all. And yet some part of you just checked anyway. That flicker of awareness, that subtle urge to glance over your shoulder in an empty parking lot, or feel your pulse quicken when a floorboard creaks upstairs. You already know there's no threat, but your body doesn't seem to have gotten the message. Here's the strange part. That feeling isn't paranoia. It's an inheritance, and it's far older than fear itself. Think about the last time you walked alone at night. Maybe you crossed the street to avoid a dark alley. Maybe you walked a little faster past a group of strangers, for no reason you could name. In that moment, your brain wasn't reasoning. It was running a program written millions of years before language, before cities, before anything you'd recognize as human civilization. For most of our species' history, you were not always the hunter. Sometimes you were the hunted. Anthropologist Donna Hart, co-author of Man the Hunted, spent years studying the fossil record of early hominins, and what she found reshaped how scientists think about human evolution. Bite marks on ancient skulls, claw patterns matching leopards and giant eagles, evidence, again and again, that our ancestors were regularly killed and eaten by predators. Not occasionally, routinely. For a huge stretch of human prehistory, being prey wasn't an exception. It was a baseline condition of being alive. That reality didn't just shape your ancestors' behavior, it shaped their brains. And you inherited the result. So, what does a brain built by predation actually look like? For one thing, it's exceptionally good at noticing movement at the edges of your vision, faster than it can consciously process what that movement is. Neuroscientists have long studied a brain structure called the amygdala, a small, almond-shaped cluster of neurons that acts like an alarm system, scanning the environment for anything that might signal danger. The amygdala doesn't wait for you to think. It reacts first and asks questions later. That's why a shadow moving in your peripheral vision can make your heart jump before you've even registered what you saw. Joseph LeDoux, a neuroscientist at New York University, has spent decades mapping how fear moves through the brain. His research revealed something the era of modern psychology hadn't fully appreciated. There are two separate pathways your brain uses to process threat. A slow one that runs through the thinking parts of your brain and carefully evaluates what's actually happening. And a fast one, a shortcut, that bypasses conscious thought entirely and triggers a full-body alarm before you've even had time to look twice. That fast pathway is ancient. It doesn't care about traffic laws or office meetings, or the fact that you live in a house with locks on the doors. It was built for a world with teeth in the grass. Why would evolution favor a system that reacts before it understands? Because in a world where predators were real and constant, the cost of hesitation was your life. A hominin who paused to carefully analyze whether that rustling sound was truly a leopard, rather than a gust of wind, was a hominin who often didn't survive long enough to pass on that careful, deliberate wiring. The nervous, jumpy ancestor who flinched at every shadow, who occasionally overreacted to nothing, lived to have children. The calm, analytical one, more often than not, did not. You are, quite literally, descended from the ones who were afraid first and thought later. This explains something that puzzles a lot of people about modern anxiety. Why does your body react so strongly to threats that aren't actually threats? Why does a tense email from your boss trigger the same racing heart as if something were chasing you? Because your threat detection system doesn't distinguish well between a predator and a deadline. It was never designed to. Robert Sapolsky, a neuroendocrinologist at Stanford University, has spent his career studying stress in primates, and one of his most cited insights is deceptively simple. Zebras don't get ulcers, but humans do. Because a zebra's stress response switches off the moment the lion is gone. A human's doesn't. Your ancient alarm system can be triggered by a memory,
an anticipated conversation, a notification on a screen, and it responds with the same full-body mobilization as if a real predator had just stepped out of the grass. Here's where it gets stranger. This hunted instinct doesn't only show up as fear. It shapes how you move through public space entirely, often without your awareness. Studies on environmental psychology have found that humans consistently prefer seating with their backs to a wall, facing an open room, in restaurants, waiting rooms, even classrooms. Researchers call this preference for a position with a clear view and a protected back the prospect refuge theory, first proposed by geographer J. Appleton. You want to see without being seen. You want an exit. Most people who choose that seat couldn't tell you why. Their nervous system already decided for them.
It's also why open, exposed spaces can feel subtly uncomfortable, even when nothing is wrong. A wide, empty field, a long stretch of open highway with no cover, a brightly lit room with too much visibility and nowhere to retreat. Something ancient in you registers exposure as risk, the same way it once did on an open savanna, where cover meant survival and open ground meant vulnerability. You don't consciously calculate any of this. You just feel it. A pull toward the corner table, a discomfort standing in the middle of an empty room, a relief when you finally close the door behind you. There's a modern twist here too, and it's worth sitting with. The predators are mostly gone, but the alarm system that evolved to detect them is still fully operational, and it doesn't know the difference between an actual predator and the countless modern stand-ins competing for its attention. A tense confrontation with a coworker, a sudden loud noise in a crowded space, even scrolling through frightening news, footage of disaster after disaster triggers the same ancient circuitry that once watched for movement in tall grass. Media psychologists have noted that constant exposure to threat-based content, whether it's true crime, breaking news, or doom-laden headlines, can keep this ancient alarm system in a near-permanent state of low-level activation. Your amygdala doesn't know that the danger on your screen is thousands of miles away, or that it happened years ago, or that it can't actually reach you. It only knows that a threat has been detected, and it responds accordingly. Is it any wonder that so many people report feeling anxious, even when, by any objective measure, they are safe? The system was built for a world with real, immediate physical danger. It was never built for a world where the threats are abstract, distant, or manufactured for your attention. And yet it fires anyway, because as far as your amygdala is concerned, a threat is a threat, whether it has claws or not. Which brings us back to that moment of glancing over your shoulder in an empty street. You weren't imagining a threat that wasn't there. You were running a program written by hundreds of thousands of years of being someone else's meal. A program so successful, so deeply embedded, that it outlived every predator that ever shaped it. Every flinch, every prickle of unease in an unfamiliar space, every instinct to sit facing the door is a message from that same ancient system, still doing the only job it has ever known how to do. Understanding this doesn't make the feeling disappear, but it does change what it means. The next time your pulse quickens for no clear reason, or your body tenses in an empty room, you'll know what's actually happening. Not weakness, not irrationality, just an old, careful watcher, still scanning the grass for something that stopped hunting you a very long time ago. So the next time you feel eyes on you in an empty room, you'll know why. You were never just the hunter. For most of your history, you were the hunted. And some part of you has never stopped looking over its shoulder.